Good evening, families, and welcome to tonight's session on 9 thoughts adults should consider during this coronavirus pandemic. And this has been a rough 12 months. This is the 12th month of knowing about the pandemic and then everything shifting for all of us. And so hopefully tonight's session will give you some ideas of things that you can do with your families and certainly help others as well. We're excited that you're here tonight. Just a couple of reminders. Anytime you need to send messages to either myself or Catherine, excuse me, please use info@parentschallenge.org, info@parentschallenge.org, because that's what we check all the time for messages from you guys. And if you send them to our personal emails, even though they're Parents Challenge, we might not get to them as quickly. Also, everyone should have received the packet in the mail. I know some of them were returned. I believe we've mailed most of them out. And in that packet is just the schedule for the spring, as well as how many classes you have completed. And we just want everyone to have that information so that you can remember what you still are responsible for and can then line or sign up for any of the sessions that work for you. We're excited that you're here tonight. We know things are still not as smooth running, and I guess the word we're saying is the new normal. Some people don't like that word or phrase, but normal as we saw it 12 months ago is not reality right now, because 12 months ago we didn't wear masks. 12 months ago we didn't have restaurants and businesses and all of that shut down. So there are some things that are part of our normal way of doing things right now, and hopefully some of those things will certainly get better. If you are experiencing any issues, any challenges, and you need some support, please reach out to us so that we can try to identify resources or services to support you and your scholars, or direct you to someone else that might be able to assist you. But our goal is to be a resource, just provide resources for you as may be needed. And some of them are going to be on an individual basis. So please reach out to us. You have our cell phone numbers, as well as sending us an email. So I am excited tonight. You're going to be put into breakout rooms quite a bit tonight. So I'm certainly going to ask that you have your cameras on if you can have your cameras on. I know some of you are not able to do that, but I also am going to ask that you participate in the breakout sessions. We have about 8 of them. So this is not a session where you can kind of check out and have us on mute and have your camera off and not participate. This is a participatory conversation, and we're asking everyone to give input because that's how we're going to learn in terms of the content that's going to be presented tonight. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Sandy Questle. Sandy has been doing parenting sessions for us for over the last 3 years. And she wrote this article a number of months ago. And I thought that having a session on this to further explore how to do this and how to work with our scholars, because they're confused during this time. If we as adults are confused, well, imagine our kids. They are definitely confused, and some of them are angry and upset and frustrated. They just don't know what's going on, and why can't they hang out with their friends like they used to, and why can't they, and why can't they, and why can't they? And at this point, we don't have answers for them either. So Sandy's going to talk about some real strategies for how to deal with this, because we've got to be real with our scholars and be honest with them, because that's the best way to get through these types of situations. So use the chat to send messages in terms of things that you might hear that you want to convey. If there's a question or whatever that comes up for you that you would like to have us ask Sandy, please make sure that you put that in the chat and we'll do that as well. So without further ado, Sandy, you're on.
I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad that we have a chance to talk and brainstorm and come up with some solutions. What I'm going to try to share with you is kind of a new perspective for looking at what's going on with the kids and what their behaviors are, and then learning from you what it is you're dealing with. And we're going to do some of that through the chat room. I have a couple of ground rules, though. One of them, I want you to know that your opinion matters. There's nobody here who's the smart expert. Everybody's dealing and coping in their own ways. And believe me, what you have to say, what you have to contribute could provide all kinds of resourceful responses and new ways of looking at things for other parents. So please participate in this. There is no such thing as an expert in this subject because we're all overwhelmed by it. So please remember that. And the other thing is, I wanted you to know this is a judgment-free zone. The only area that you cannot cross, as a counselor, I'm also a mandated reporter, and I can't, so any suggestions of abuse or a threat of abuse is something that I ethically and legally have to report. So you can talk about behaviors and challenges, just let's not go into that arena because it can't really be part of this conversation. And then one of the things I'm going to be asking you a lot of, and hopefully the chat room will allow you to do that, is to tell us what you think and how you're experiencing what's going on and how you're experiencing the care of your children now. And I'm going to try and give you some different points of view and ways to kind of look at what you're experiencing, because each of us is drained to a greater or lesser extent, on top of which, you know, our children's lives are upside down also. So please be sure to ask any open-ended questions. Please comfortably interrupt me. You can put it in the chat room or you can wave your hand at me. I only see a few of your video pictures up here, but please feel free to be part of the discussion, because that's how we're going to really come to the most effective solutions for you guys. And then one of the things we'll learn in the chat rooms is what you hope to get from this. And my thinking is you're probably looking for some new ideas and some new solutions. So I wanted to start just with a little moment of fun. I'm going to give you an exercise. It has to do with the subject of the power of influence. And so I want you to listen carefully. There's literally hundreds of possible outcomes. I want to see how successful I am in influencing yours. So number one, I would like you to visualize a number between 1 and 10. I want you to really focus on it. And if you have a pen there and you want to write it down, that'd be great too. Just a simple number between 1 and 10. Once you get that number, I want you to multiply it by 9. And as someone who got a D in algebra and flunked geometry, if you need help multiplying, don't be embarrassed to ask us, because everybody doesn't do math very well all the time. So you're going to take a number between 1 and 10. You're going to multiply it by 9. And now you should have a 2-digit number. And I want you to add the 2 digits together. So if the number was 36, you would add 3 plus 6, okay? Add the 2 digits together. Are y'all with me? Wave at me or something so I know we're all on the same page, okay? Now, whatever that answer was, I want you to subtract 5 from that number. So if the number you had was 30, minus 5 would be 25. And you should be ending up now with a 1-digit number. Okay, now I want you to find a letter of the alphabet that corresponds to that number. If the number is 6, you would be A, B, C, D, E, F. whatever number you have, find a letter of the alphabet that corresponds to it, and go ahead and jot it down. Don't say it out loud. You ready? Go on. Wave at me if you're ready. I want you to visualize the first country that pops into your mind, beginning with that letter right now. Don't analyze it. Right now. First country that comes into your mind. If it's an L, you could say Lithuania. If it's an F, you could say France. Just the first country, I mean, that comes into your mind. And I want you to go to the second letter of that country and visualize the first animal that pops into your head. Whatever animal, the name that starts with that letter. And now I want you to visualize the color of that animal. And may I ask you to wave at me? So Deborah, I see, including you and I, well, besides you and I see 4 faces on the screen. Do we have more people than that?
So we have 19 people on the call.
Okay, so after you visualize that the color of that animal, I want to know if any of you were visualizing a gray elephant in Denmark. There's one hand up. Anybody else? Deborah, can you see?
3, 4. I see 5 hands that said, yeah, 6 hands.
Well, there you go. So the reason we did this is to demonstrate to you what the power of influence can do. So as we apply that to parenting, especially at a time now when fuses are short, when kids have very little opportunity to feel like they're in charge of anything anymore and have any sense of control over their lives, which is also something we're dealing with, you want to remember, and we're going to talk about it more in parenting techniques, the power of influencing your child rather than ordering your child. Okay, so there really was a purpose to that. So we can go on now. Deborah, did you get it right or not?
I didn't participate because I don't know my numbers or alphabets. I'm just kidding.
Well, did you come up with a gray elephant?
I didn't participate. I was just paying attention.
Oh, okay. Okay. All righty. So let's go ahead and start with the PowerPoint, and we'll just kind of do it one step at a time.
Hold on one second. Let me pull it up.
And Deborah, you'll watch the chat box, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the thing that I want you, life has seemed so impossible for all of us, so impossible on so many levels, economically, in terms of our social isolation, in terms of our mood swings, our feelings, in terms of our ability to have any sense of control over our lives. But I want you to know every challenge has solutions, including the coronavirus challenges. And we're going to go through some of those in the area of parenting. And I encourage you, if we do the 6-week parenting class again this year, which I think we're going to do at some point during the year, to please hook up with us for that, because you're going to take many techniques and strengths home with you for working with your kids, and a whole new perspective for understanding their behavior. But we're going to tap on some of it within the time we have. So go ahead, Deborah, we're ready. And I really applaud that you all are taking time in your lives when you are exhausted for a lot of reasons, to sit and learn and work with us to try and come up with some new viewpoints and some new techniques. So I would have to say that you have the energy to do this, or you wouldn't be here. Go ahead, Deborah, we're good. So there are 9 things we're going to look at. And one of them has to do is, again, the vastness of how many hundreds of thousands of people and millions of people and children are affected worldwide, but we'll just be selfish and look in our own country right now. And everything you're feeling right now, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely valid. You do feel the isolation because guess what? we are isolated. And we feel trapped because everything in our lives is severely limited. So one of the things I want you to do is work with me to begin to realize the value of identifying and owning that. You can't do anything about something that you don't identify and take ownership of. And once you do that, and it's not a question of whether you're at fault or not, it's not about being at fault or weak. It's about saying, this sucks. I realize I'm struggling. And on top of it all, I've got these kids who feel like they're ganging up on me all day long, and they're not able to get with their friends and can't go to school, and we're just going nuts here. And maybe I even had to stop with my job because my kids were home and they were too young to be independently at home. So if you are feeling disorganized, it's because our lives are disorganized. And if you feel scared, it's because scary things are happening, both in terms of the virus, in terms of our economics, in terms of people who've lost their jobs, or, all of it. And again, none of us is practiced or prepared to have 365-day-a-year relationships and encounters with our children, because we all have other areas that we bounce in and out of, and that's not the case anymore. So if you're feeling like there's an effect, the one thing I want to get across to you is it's valid, and it's not because you're weak, and it's not because you're broken, and it's not because you can't handle it. It's because this is overwhelming for the majority of people for different reasons. Everybody has their own reasons and needs. But bottom line is our lives have completely gone upside down. So go ahead, Deborah. Thank you. So one of the biggest things we're going to do is we're going to own what we're feeling. We're going to own the frustration we have toward parenting. And we're going to separate that from the quality or the value of your parenting. The two aren't the same. You could be a great parent who's frustrated, tired, exhausted, and overwhelmed, and you're not going to be able to relate in the same way. So I know so many people and so many families I've worked with where it's a sense of personally condemning themselves for not being, the patient saint, and not being the one who can keep the kids positive all day long, and who maybe just wishes she could, just go lock herself in the bathroom for a while, or himself in the bathroom for a while, and just get some quiet. So one of the things I hope you'll come away with from this is to give yourself some slack, because putting external pressure on or internal pressure on yourselves for the shortcomings you're experiencing now only adds to the stress. And you also need to, own the fact that it's not because you're broken, it's because so many different systems and relationships and activities in our lives just kind of have disappeared, have gone away. So we're all kind of caught in the storm and not knowing what to do. And don't beat yourselves up over it. That's part of this experience. So, okay, go ahead, Deborah, we're good. So this is our first breakout. And Deborah, how do you plan on sorting out who goes where or who talks to who?
So I already have everybody into breakout sessions. So there'll either be 4 or 5 people in a breakout session.
So I'd like you to review these questions and then let us all come and be honest, be painfully honest. You'll be doing the person sitting next to you who maybe feels that he or she hasn't done a very good job parenting through this. You're going to help that person take some of that heat off of themselves. So be very honest. And if you would just go ahead, and we'll give you a few minutes to go through some of these questions as a group, and then hopefully somebody will elect a group leader. One of you will say, yep, I'll speak forth and share it with the class.
So somebody can make sure that you take a picture of this slide so that you can have it when you get into your breakout session and you'll know what the questions are. All right, welcome back, everyone. I know you probably didn't get through all of the questions, and that's okay. So we just need one person from each group to report out. You have a minute to do that, just to share just some of the highlights of what your group came up with. So in room 1, we had Annabelle, Chanel, Lisa, and Melanie. So who's reporting out? From group 1, who's your reporter? Okay, so do I need to pick somebody? Lisa, why don't you be the reporter? What did your group talk about?
We talked about just the challenges and the stressors that we're going through. We focused a lot on the e-learning. Also, you know, the children's frustrations on not being able to see their friends and do the things that they've wanted to do in the past. And I don't have a picture of the question, so if you want to tell me. That's really basically what we talked about, though, so I don't know that there's much more I could offer.
Okay. All right, I'll put the questions back on the screen so everybody can see them.
Well, and it isn't that anybody had to answer all of them, but they're all so intertwined that I just wanted an overall picture of what you're all dealing with.
Yeah. All right, group 2. I think Holman, I think I heard you facilitating, so.
Yes, I can share. I think we were just kind of identifying the stressors in our kids' lives. One person just shared how, you know, they might go to school one day and then the next day find out that they're in quarantine for the next 2 weeks and they've maybe left some books at school and now they're panicking about, you know, how they're going to get all their stuff and get all their homework assignment done, or being triggered by, you know, we were out of school for so long and then we go back to school and then we find out we've been exposed and now we're triggered and having to be out of school again. We don't know how long it's going to be, all the unknowns, just the stress of that. And then somebody else shared how both the mom and dad are working. So their kids have to go to the grandparents' house and try to do their homework. So there's just so much transition constantly that just when you think you have landed on both feet, something else changes and you have to, you know, figure out a new normal. And that new normal might last a day or two or a week or two. And I think that just makes everybody feel unsafe because I think kids like structure and I think so do adults. And so we're all just always feeling what's going to be next and what's going to be my tomorrow.
Okay, thank you for that.
Those both of you, those are great answers that you've given. So go ahead, Deborah.
All right, so in room 3, we had Amanda, Jeffrey, Joy, Sharice. Who's reporting on your group?
I can talk, Sharice. I'm in the car running a last minute errand, so sorry. So we just talked about that really just the stress of just our children just not being able to be around like their friends and things like that. Amanda shared about her, sorry, Amanda, I called you out. I guess I should have said a member in our group. Sorry, Amanda. I was just talking about her child stress and how it's just been like overly stressful that he hasn't been able to do so many things. So of course that just adds on to stress onto everyone else. And then we just were talking about just working on not trying to stress our children out with our own issues. But even before the pandemic, we had our stresses in life. So, and then we were talking about the challenges, but we didn't really go that far. I got to talk, clearly I'm the talker. But I said I was just fortunate enough because my son's school has basically been the same since March. They went right into virtual learning right away. They know the expectation. He knows his schedule. He knows if they do unfortunately have to quarantine, he knows like when to log in, his classes, and even at school, if he's in school, he's on the computer the same as if he's at home. So thankfully, my family, I mean, it sounds kind of selfish, but thankfully we haven't felt too many stresses of school closing. And I work with kids, so when school's closed, I get to be home. So sorry, everyone else.
All right. All right, thanks, Sharice. And then I think, Lacey, you're doing it for your group.
Okay, so if I can walk through a little bit of these, because the three people that we had in ours, with the stressors that our kids had was pretty much everybody's. With the kids not knowing from 1 week to the next, so whether it was online learning or in-school learning, as well as if they got exposed, are they going home? Our stresses coming off on our kids as far as our own health and our daily lives, and then challenges like the routines changing up. Like when your young one comes home and all of a sudden you've got to juggle this little one with the homeschooler, and the little one's routine is off balance. Share the challenges your family faces regarding to boredom. Boredom with all three of us it is apparent in all of us. Boredom is pretty big for us, but we've actually fought through in stepping up on going outside, playing in the snow and walking the dogs and finding new things to do. What has worked so far when behavior issue occurs, that really depends on the family, because my group had small kids and I have teenagers. It's a little different dynamic, so I really can't we didn't really get that far into it, so.
Well, that's okay. I wanted to go wherever the questions led them.
Yeah, that's it. We really covered all of it as far as even with the behavior, because boredom, it really is one, unless we get those kids outside when we're able to. But it's also, if you see a group, you stay away, and that's so hard when they're little. Why can't I be with my friends?
Yeah.
Same with teenagers. They really want to be with their friends and they can't.
Okay. All right, those are all the groups, Sandy.
That is excellent feedback. I don't know how many opportunities you've all had to share your thoughts with other people, but for those of you who have, this is just a reinforcement that in a brand new group that you don't usually socialize with, maybe, everybody's having similar struggles. And for those of you who don't have a place to interact and have a chance to just let down and say what's going on, you can even hear the elements of everything you're dealing with in what's even been reported after such a brief encounter. I think you all had 6 minutes to communicate. And that's why I put so many topics in the question, because I thought, rather than poke at it, let's see what floats to the top that has been most often something that you all have had to deal with. So, so I congratulate you for sharing that. And I hope hearing each other share it makes you realize that you're not alone if you haven't had that opportunity to share like this before, and that it has nothing to do with your inability to parent well and to parent supportively, nor does it have to do with your internal resources being inadequate, your patience, your creativity as a parent. This is just an exhausting job. It's kind of like putting gas in your car, and I don't know how many miles a car goes on a tank of gas, but if you don't refill the fuel, the car ain't going to be able to go forward very well. I mean, if it's coasting downhill a little, it can go for a while, but it's a struggle the whole time. And I think that's what I'm hoping that you'll each hear from one another, is that it isn't just about you, and it isn't because you couldn't handle it well. So, you know, I applaud you. What slide are we on now, Deborah? I'm not paying attention, I guess.
Alleviate your child's stress.
Yeah, no, okay, no, I saw that. I just wondered if, okay, so one of the things that I want you all to understand is being brave and trying to keep that smile and have that positive energy in some ways is a good thing. On the other hand, you've already covered the fact that your kids are dealing with a lot of stress also. And there's a very useful kind of a technique, which I refer to as coming alongside your kids and letting them know that this isn't just them, that even as an adult, because so there's all kinds of statistics on communication, but one of them is that over 90% of communication is nonverbal. It has to do with your facial expressions, your body language, your energy level, all of these nonverbal things. And so what I want you all to understand, you don't want to look toward your kids as advisors who you can vent to, but if you think that they don't know, can't feel, it's not even an intellectual process of knowing as much as it is a feeling they get, that you are also stressed and tired and worried and lonely. And so you don't want to turn that around and consider your kid to be the ear that will listen to you, as much as you want to let them know that this isn't just something that you're dealing with. And it's okay for you to feel this way, because life is very different than it used to be for you. And you don't have nearly as much of, everything has changed, which makes you wonder about what's going to change next. And you might just want to invite them to tell you how it is for them. So explain to me how all these changes, what are the changes that you feel? And how are those changes affecting your life? And so giving them a chance to talk, giving them a chance, and let's say it's a kid who's nonverbal. You could pull out some markers or some crayons or something and say, show me how that feels. They don't even have to draw a picture. If they could just do scribble marks and whatever, and you can tell by the dark colors if that's what it is, or how hard they're pressing on that crayon. And you just point out to them, looks like you're putting a lot of energy into that picture, and I thank you for that. But it looks like maybe there's, some upset there too, that's causing these heavy scribbles. And look, the paper even tore in one part because you were pressing so hard. And I get it. And that's not anything you're doing wrong. And that's not because you're not handling this well. It's because this is a very tough time. So you can kind of come alongside them in a lot of ways rather than just manage them. Okay, so we're talking about coping. Hold on one sec. Let me get this note. The coping tools. Okay. So one of the things I teach in the longer course is a concept that sounds like this. Children think differently from adults. Their brains aren't at the same level of maturity. So literally, their brains don't work the way yours do. And so there's a term we call concrete thinking. Children are very concrete thinkers. If they can see it, touch it, hear it, smell it, it makes sense to them. If it's brief and to the point, it makes sense to them. When we talk about abstract concepts, when we try to give them the friendly parental caring lecture, my suggestion to you is that when you talk at great length, you might just stop suddenly and ask if you're having a heart-to-heart about how things are for your family and for them personally, having so many changes in their lives. And you can ask them, what are the changes that you feel? So you can't assume that your experience is the same as theirs, but you can certainly validate what they're feeling by asking them. And you can even say, I know what I feel, but I don't know what you feel. Can you explain to me what it's like for you? Well, Mommy, I don't know where to begin. Or Daddy, I'm not sure what you're asking. Well, let's just talk about how does it feel about school? And you go through the things that you think is important to your child or children. How do you feel that you can't go play outside and run down to the park and go kick the ball with the kids, you know, whatever it is. And so along with that concrete thinking, having to do with actions, and actually I brought a little summary sheet. Let me see if I can find it real quick on concrete thinking. Here it is. So let me give you some examples. A concrete thinker will think about this particular dog, like the one that's right in front of me. An abstract thinker might think about dogs in general, all kinds of dogs, different breeds and all that. A concrete thinker will think about this dog on this rug that I'm looking at right now. And another more abstract thinker might think about something like, well, let's take a look and see, instead of just this dog on this rug, maybe we could talk about spatial relations. What is he laying on? Does he prefer to lay on the sofa? You see, your thinking gets more abstract. It's not just what you see and what you experience in terms of behavior. And so I want you to understand your children, if they're polite, if they're tired, if they just love to get your attention, might listen very with seeming wonderful attention. But you might sometimes just toss in, can you kind of tell me what I just said to you? Can you explain what I just said to you? And you will be surprised how often your kids will respond with, I don't know. If they're polite or tired or whatever, they may sit quietly while you're doing your parental lecturing. And if they're not, they may get up and walk away. They may start, kicking their feet into the legs of the table, whatever it is. But when you speak to children, you will be much more successful in being heard if you speak about actions, about behaviors, and in short sentences, unlike what I'm doing to you, and I hope nobody's gone to sleep yet. But it's the same thing for the kids. So you want to remember that kids are very concrete thinkers, okay? Here's another example. We may see a certain amount of cookies on a plate on the kitchen counter, and a concrete thinker will think, oh, there's 3 cookies. And maybe an abstract thinker will think, oh, the number 3. Gee, there's all kinds of numbers. Gee, you could even count up to 10 if you wanted, or 1,000,000 or whatever. So one is very bound by what is seen, what can be touched, what is experienced. And the other train of thought, the more abstract, is able to draw conclusions, able to put different facts together to create some kind of input, okay? So the other thing that when I've encountered kids who are hurting, and I might suggest it to you, and if you don't have Band-Aids in your house, you could even do it with a pretty piece of tape that maybe you or the kid colors. But if a kid is hurting, even like the kid in this picture on this slide, you could ask the kid, gee, sometimes when I'm hurting, it's just kind of a pretend thing, but it feels better to have a Band-Aid. Can I get you a Band-Aid? And would you like to pick it? You try to empower your child. And where would you like me to put that Band-Aid? Do you want to put it on? And so it's that kind of a thing. And the same thing when they want to speak, maybe they feel that they're not heard, and you might be able to come up with some kind of an arrangement with them with, maybe, I don't know if you've got 1 kid in your house or 4 kids in your house. And so it gets kind of out of control sometimes, but maybe there's a special hat you could designate when you want to be heard, and everybody wants to understand that you want to be heard. Why don't you go put that baseball cap on? We'll make that our listen to me cap. And the same thing with just wishing things were different. One of the things you can do that could be very powerful is when your child starts venting, you say to them, wow, what you are saying is so important. Now, you're not saying it makes sense. You're not saying it's informative. You're not saying it's worthwhile. You're saying that it's just important to you to let me know that, isn't it? And you know what? I'd like to get a pen and write down what you're saying. Can you just wait 1 second? And I will go grab a pencil and a paper and I'm going to write down what you're saying, because you're sharing your feelings, you're sharing some important thoughts, and you're not evaluating it. You're just simply, especially if a kid is upset and frustrated, you let them know, I hear you. And I want to write that down so we don't forget, and we can even read it back later. And you can't believe how well that works to help a child calm down. You're totally focused on them and you're writing away. Okay.
So Sandy, one of the questions in the chat noted that using Band-Aids might work when a kid is younger, but how do you do that with teenagers and not, degrade them?
Well, so the question would be, how can you help a kid find some source of comfort in some kind of a concrete way? Remember, I said kids are concrete thinkers. And so doing something like a Band-Aid. So you might ask your teenager, you might say to them, I hear you. I can't tell you how valuable it is, whether you agree or disagree, just to validate, just to let your kid know, I'm listening and I hear you. So I hear you. And it sounds to me like you have a lot of big feelings. You're not identifying the feelings. You're not pretending to read their mind. You're just saying, it sounds like you have a lot of big feelings. So for your little brother over there, it helps to put a Band-Aid on, just because it helps them remember that there's ways that our bodies heal, and our feelings can heal that way too. What do you think would help you? What would help you? Ask the kid, how do you think you can let people know that you have big feelings, and whether you're ready to share them or not? What do you think we could do? Because I'd like us to be able to share that with each other, because it's a big load for us to carry all by ourselves. I would open it up and let the kid decide what would work. Doesn't have to be a Band-Aid. It can be, gosh, when you're feeling awful, I can't even tell you. So I was a foster parent for close to 30 years, and I can't even tell you how many gallons of hot chocolate we went through, because it was very comforting for the kids. And it just took 1 teaspoon of the chocolate powder in a cup, and it was almost a medicinal thing. It was almost like, let's sit down, and it was warm, it was soothing, and the kid had your attention, and then you take it from there and you ask them, how can we get this worked out so that you're feeling better? I want to stand right beside you. Sometimes artwork can be tremendously useful. And even with a teen, you might say, hey, you know what? Why don't you scratch it out for me on a piece of paper? I want to see what that looks like. So whenever you can take abstract feelings and turn them into something that's concrete, for instance, the suggestions I just made, it helps the kid get control, and it also helps the kid feel like they have more control, because they really do have control over it. So even something like, why don't you show me? And let's say the kid takes the paper, and instead of drawing whatever, you invited them to draw, how they were feeling or whatever, they just smashed it into a smashed up piece of paper as big as a golf ball. They smashed it so tightly. And you say, well, that tells me as much as the crayon, or maybe more, how you're feeling. And you let the kid know, thank you for sharing that. And then you say, what do you think might be some helpful solutions? There's lots of things in our lives now we have no control over, but what do you think we could do that we do have control over to help us get through this as easily as possible? You come alongside your child, even at the teenage level, and you let them know. And make yourself available. And some of them will reach out and some of them won't, and you just let them know, when you're ready, I'm here. So, and our kids they sense our feelings. And so I want to explain to you the difference between empathy and sympathy, because it's huge. When you sympathize with someone, you're out here saying, oh, I'm so sorry for you. You know, I see that you're hurting or whatever, which is very different than coming alongside the kid and saying, I am right here by you. And it seems to me like this just hurts so much. And I am sorry you're hurting. And the empathy, the feeling that you're having as you are with the kid, identifying some disappointment or some hurt. You're not going to be a mind reader because you're not. Okay. So that's the kind of thing. And you're going to look for red flags. You're maybe going to share. Red flags means points in behavior that are getting pretty hefty, that they can't be ignored. And the kid is kind of saying, I feel like I'm going to explode. And we'll come up with some other ideas along the way. But your concerns and your children's concerns are not a sign of weakness. And the more you can come alongside the kid with that, I think the more you'll see that it can be under some more self-control on their parts. And you can talk about ideas about how can we take care of one another. You know what? There's nobody else out there we can go to because of this darn virus. But since we're all in this house together, what can we do to take care of one another? And whether it's bake together, draw together, just sit together and look out the window and really be with your kid at that point, whatever it is, you just want to get across to them, I am right here with you. And I know that we're all feeling uncomfortable. You don't tell anybody, I know you're feeling uncomfortable, because it's for them to identify that. But I know so many people are feeling uncomfortable, and we are too, because everything's changed in our lives. So what can we do to take care of each other through this hard time? That's all. So again, your children are going to turn to you to be a role model, and it's important that you step up to the plate. And part of being a role model is also sharing with them. They don't need to get into the nitty gritty of what you're feeling and what you're struggling with, but part of it is sharing with them that this is hard for everybody. And don't expect that to be a comfort for them, but at least it's a sense of saying, we're all in this together. And yes, it is beyond our control, but there are certain things that we do have control over. And you maybe start pointing out, we can decide what we're going to have for breakfast. We can decide when we want to be quiet in our room and when we want to come out and play a game. So, and then there's this concept of family meetings. You could start setting up a schedule where you ask the kids to come together. I mean, everybody's hanging around at home anyway. It's not like anybody's giving up their baseball practice to be part of this. And you could even have different members of the family taking turns leading the meeting. And the purpose of the meeting, you can decide together, well, what would you guys like to do at these meetings? I guess I'd like to learn more about how you're feeling. And maybe I'd like you to know that even as a grown-up, I'm uncomfortable with a lot of what's going on. And so we can decide, maybe should we have a special snack at our meetings? Should we celebrate when we can share with each other, share our conversations, that sort of a thing. Art projects, I can't even begin to tell you how comfortable those can be. And you don't have to go out and, you know, spend $20 on supplies. You can't believe the kinds of things that just look around your house, and you can decide what it is you can turn into an art project. It can be, you know, many unexpected things, and we're going to get to some of them shortly. And the other thing is that you want to, and especially since we have lost so much sense of empowerment over our lives, you want to really try to empower your children. And you want to ask for their input. You want to thank them for sharing. You want to, you know, even if it's things, you know, what do you guys think we should put together for dinner tonight? Can somebody help? Yeah, the budget's tight, but this is what we can, you know, this is what we'll be able to make for tonight, and how can we make it the best way possible? And maybe we'll surprise, you know, whoever's not home with this great dinner. You try to start coming alongside them instead of managing them. You try to come alongside them more. So there's a concept that I teach in the longer training called point sheets. And especially, I mean, I've even done them with adolescents, but especially with younger kids, you can list some behaviors that that are expectations. That might be makes bed every day. It might be says good morning, mom. It might be clears dishes after dinner. It can be whatever you decide. And you just make a sheet of paper where you list some of these. You could even allow the kid to say, well, what would you like to work on? And then you figure out some kind of a pattern of celebrating when they do their point sheets. And I'll give you the schedule for that in a second. So if you have if money is not a major factor for you, it could even be pennies. You could have set amounts that they get for doing these particular items on the point sheet. If that doesn't work, it could be 15 more minutes with the TV or with their, some of their electronics or whatever it is. You have little special rewards. So you list these behaviors, you find something that would be pleasurable for the kid to get. Maybe it's to bake with mom one day, or to put bubbles in the kitchen sink, and and swim our plastic horses in the kitchen sink with the bubbles, whatever it is that's fun, or that's pleasurable for the child. And you make those the rewards for the items that they're able to do. And you kind of set a standard, how many things, you list them on a piece of paper, what these behaviors are. You never force the child to do it, but you be very clear that the rewards are only available for doing those behaviors. So at the end of each day, you kind of say, well, which ones of these things on your mind would you like to review the point sheet today? And let's talk about it and mark down what you did. And then how would you like to celebrate that? You put it to the kid that way. Okay, so boy, we're spinning around. Are we where we need to be?
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
I think we are.
Okay.
Here we go.
So we're on slide 14 now. We skipped something because breakout 2 was slide 11.
Nope. This is the last slide we were on. Now this is the next slide.
Okay. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the third principle in the training, which is, hold on one sec, let me get it out. Well, you're not in control of the coronavirus, but you are in control. You are absolutely in control of your thoughts, your actions, and your interactions. And I think that the fact that there's so much in our lives that we're not in control of, it's upsetting, and it gets us down. On the other hand, there is so much that we are in control of, and I want you to begin to practice focusing on what you are in control of. So it's kind of back to the same question: is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? And it depends on how you view it, whether it's draining out or whether there's still some resources left there. So you are in control of your thoughts, your actions, and your interactions. And it's important for you to keep that in mind as you're interacting with your kids and as you're dealing with the stresses that you're facing every day. So let's go on to breakout number 3. What I'd like you to do is come up with maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 concerns that you have that you're going to share with the group. It could be about your children's behavior. It could be about boredom, the increased need for supervision, the exhaustion that comes from parenting full-time. And we know what full-time means now, don't we? The loneliness that comes from the lack of social contact, and the confusion from the upset in the daily routines and feeling trapped. Financial issues, health issues, whatever. So if you would please come back with maybe 3 to 5 concerns that most of you are feeling. I think that it would be helpful if we could hear what each other are thinking.
Okay, I think everybody is back now. So whoever the person was that took all your notes, if you can start just putting some of the concerns, or anybody, put the concerns in the chat, and we're going to start responding to some of your concerns in the chat. All right, Sandy, so here's some of the things that people are saying.
Okay.
The vaccine. Being in a split home. One side of the family gets quarantined, and it's much more challenging because then it can be weeks to see the father. Safety in school. Not sure if there's enough information about the virus and not wanting to put fear in the kids. Parent stresses affecting the kids, financial stresses, standards for education being way lower, being completely over it. Thanks, Lisa, that's a good one. Food insecurity, isolation, kids getting something. Missing normalcy of field trips, in-person contact. I'll meet with any of you in person because I'm over it as well. So kids in regular school year, not enough information about the vaccine. So just
It's the, yeah, it's
uncertainties, the
uncertain
uncertainties.
everything.
But anybody who wants to meet with me for coffee or lunch or dinner, hey, in person, none of this virtual stuff, let me know. I'm all for it.
Something just came on from Melanie. Kids being passed.
On even with Fs,
Oh,
COVID, and the experiences that our kids are missing because of COVID.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can
So,
also walk them through these experiences to the best of your coping skills. And believe it or not, they're going to learn some amazing coping skills of their own at maybe a young age, and when nobody really wanted to have to teach these things. But there are positives that come out of this.
yeah, the concern is that academic standards are being lowered to accommodate, and if school-age children would be administered the vaccine. I know that's come up in several cases.
Yep.
So lots of concerns.
Well, I appreciate that you guys are sharing them. And all I can say is you also have to take a look at the strength factor. I mean, number one, you're here. And number two, you are still caring for your children at home. So I think that let's take a look at number four. So I think that just acknowledging what you're dealing with, just giving yourself permission to say, wow, this is a load, to just tell yourself this is a load, but I'm strong and we've made it this far. And that self-talk, I think I can make things very different. So if you could even put in the chat, what are some of the changes in your life that we haven't covered already? And how are all these changes affecting you and your ability to get some sleep at night? The first step toward improvement is recognizing, and that's why we're identifying and recognizing right now. And we'll take just a couple of minutes with it, Deborah, and then just plug along.
Changes in our lives is, again, the education piece. washing hands, sore, washing masks, shrinking, taking vitamins, and praying. Absolutely. Will we ever be able to not wear masks? My 2-year-old is now required to wear it at grocery stores, planes, and the library. Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Not enough info on the vaccine again.
Yeah. And of course,
Wow.
talking-
Amanda trying to find a way to de-stress when she doesn't have time off, and then when she gets time off, nothing's open. And
Yeah.
businesses have so many protocols now. Unemployment's an issue. You know, business traffic is an issue. So a lot of changes in our life, and some of those changes are potentially not going to go back to the way they used to be.
Deborah, let's just take an unannounced moment here. And could people put in the chat, how are you de-stressing? What are you doing to de-stress? And we could probably learn quite a bit from one another. So go ahead and put those in the chat. And
What are you doing to de-stress? Lots of soaking baths.
well, there you go.
Yep, soaking in the tub. Laying in the snow when it's quiet. Taking time to spend with family, walking a lot.
So I think that's pretty powerful. You're taking the opportunities you have to de-stress, which is important. So all of you remember that. There are things that each of us can do that are comforting and calming, and you want to remember to focus on those also, not just the stress you're carrying, but how to unload some of it for yourselves.
Also, some are struggling. They find themselves retreating to their bed way too often. No motivation.
Yep. And so, you know, some of the suggestions, you know, again, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? It's got the same amount of liquid in it. And how we perceive it and is part of how we experience it. So maybe at those times when you're feeling as dumped down low as you are, and we all go through it, you make an intentional effort to take a look at some of the positives in your life, whatever those are, whether it's that, you know, your kids are doing okay, that your family hasn't been infected, that, you know, there's a source of food, whether it's because you still have a job and money, or whether it's because you found a food bank that can help you, but where you begin to intentionally focus on the positives. And I think you'll find that that will make a big difference for you. Because the negatives just slap us in the face over and over again. So it's important to make an intentional effort to focus on some of that positive. And so that leads us into the next one. I mean, how many of us literally feel like we're boring ourselves to death? And then what you have to do, oh man, this is something I learned a lot of years ago that I don't implement well all the time, but I'm better at it than I was years ago. And that is to realize that there is no correlation between how much you're eating yourself up and worrying and successful outcome. It's not like, well, if I just worry more deeply or worry for longer or eat my heart out more, then things will get better. So part of what you need to do is realize what you do have control over and what you don't have control over. That doesn't mean that you're not aware of the struggle. It just means, again, if you eat yourself alive for it, if you worry yourself to death, does that result in a positive outcome? And then you got to say, the only person paying the price for that is me. Maybe I can get through this crisis, whatever the current crisis is with the virus, without literally eating myself up alive. So, you know,
Sandy, can we, instead of sending them to breakouts.
Yeah.
Can I call on a couple of people and have some folks share
Sure.
some examples of how you have felt like you were worrying yourself to death? Did anything change for the better? So let's see who I haven't heard from. Brett, what would be your response to this question?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that the most thing that I've been worrying most about is, I got a 16-year-old son that's turning 16, and it's okay. Well, he needs a car to drive. He needs this, and worrying about all the things that are coming up in his life to give him a normal life within the fact that, jobs have slowed down. People aren't going out as much to spend money in the type of field that I'm in. And so making ends meet, you grab a second job so you can accommodate him to have a normal life that I had growing up. It's okay buying a car and making sure that's functional and still being able to provide the other stuff that a 16-year-old child would need. And, like, oh, you need $100 pair of basketball shoes, but you also want a car. And it's been, worrying about making sure that you're following through as a parent, like your parents did for you. It's just in this type of lifestyle, it's completely changed to the point where it's like, well, I can't do for my kids like my parents did for me. And so you're having to come up with alternatives, which are super, super stressful, like mentally, physically, emotionally, to a point where it's like you do want to break down. But you can't for your kids' sake, but I know it's coming out a lot like that, where you feel you're not fulfilling their needs to the expectation that you have for yourself, I guess.
So you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah, way too much.
Well,
It sounds like you need to learn this word, this two-letter word. You know what that is?
What's that?
No.
No. Yeah, right. Yeah. No, and that is a lot of what they do get a lot of the no's, but at the same time, there's always those. I think as humans, we hold ourselves to a very high expectation to be the best or to provide more than what we had when we were growing up. And sometimes it's like, I don't want to let them have to, go with what I never had to go without. So even though, yeah, you can say no, that is hard for me, I guess.
It's hard. It's hard, and I totally understand.
well,
So
but the other thing life is not all smooth and full of vanilla ice cream for all of us, all of our lives anyway. Even when we've had periods of our lives when we've had everything on a golden tray, there's still times when we don't. And so again, how you present that with your kids, how you experience it with your kids has everything to do with what they take away from it. So again, you come alongside them with the empathy. I get it. This is really hard for you. We just can't go car shopping. I get it. And it's harder for you to find a job to begin to work for it. Let's say your kid wants to get a job on the side. I get it. So, and then what works very well is let's make a list. Let's make a list of all the things we wish could happen that just aren't happening right now. And you know what? Let's put that in an envelope and stick it in the drawer. Now let's take a look. Are there any positives happening in our lives right now? And so we can't change the circumstances, especially with something like the virus, but we can change the focus with which we're experiencing it. And I think that it sucks no matter what. I agree with you totally. But nevertheless, if you continue to focus on the frustration and the deprivation and the anger and the anxiety, you want to acknowledge that those things are there. You don't want to ignore it or tell the kid you're not feeling that way. But again, you still try to emphasize for the kid, but what do we have some control over? And it might be something as little as what's for dinner tonight. It might be something, well, I can't have a car. Maybe now's a good time. I can start jogging and really build up my muscles. So when I can get back to school, I can try out for the, the whatever, the lacrosse team or whatever. So there's always a nugget of something. You want to have empathy for what they're dealing with and what you're dealing with. But then if you stay in that place of loss and deprivation, how are you benefiting yourself? And believe it or not, if you all go home and take off the glasses that say, this sucks and I'm miserable, and just put on a new set of lenses for a little while and say, well, what do I have in my life that's of benefit? Well, those of you who've got your kids, you've got your kids, you'll have to look and see what you have. I don't know the details of your lives, but I guarantee you that even the most upsetting life has some positives, and we just forget to look at those. Doesn't make the negatives go away. It helps us balance our perception of what's going on and our experience of it. So let's go ahead and so we can zip right past the other one again. Go ahead if you would, Deborah. What is the relationship between worrying and successful outcome? And if you find it successful to worry, then please call me, because I'd like to know how that's working for you. Let's go ahead. So now we're going to use our imaginations, because we don't have the money. We can't go to the bowling alley. We can't take our kids out to dinner. We can't do all of these things, either because of financial issues, because of infection issues, whatever it is. So now the question is, what are some things? How could we look at the life that we have in a brand new way and say, what are some of the little things that we do every day, or that we could do every day, that could be fun for us? And that's was play little fun games together, make lists of things to do and see who gets their list done, and have a surprise for that. I mean, you kind of have to take one set of lenses off, that this sucks and we're miserable and nothing's working right for us, and say, yeah, but there are some things working, because we're still here, we're still together, we still get up in the morning, and maybe we need to just shift our emphasis for a little while. And I think part of it has to do with what we choose to do with our feelings and our perceptions. And so again, I'm just suggesting to you that and just take something as small as an idea like, especially for young kids, but honestly, I've seen teenagers have fun with this. You get yourself a box of instant pudding, and you mix that pudding up, and you put that pudding in a tray, and you let the kids finger paint with it. I mean, you can't believe how much fun that is. And if you're really daring, you could even, if you had food coloring in your house, you could divide it into little bowls, and some could have some green food coloring, some could have some yellow, red, blue, and you just make up new things that never made sense before. If you've got shaving cream and the kids are bored in the bathtub, and if you squirt it on that back wall of the bathtub and let them finger paint with the shaving cream while they're in the bathroom, you're going to need to look beyond how you've defined your life so far, and just kind of think about, what are some creative new things that I haven't even thought of, because I've just been so oppressed over all the burdens that we're carrying right now because of all the changes. But there are, and you might even ask your kids, what would be fun for us to do? What could we do today that might be more fun? What could, or more interesting? Or let's just think of one thing today that we could try, and see what they come up with.
So I've got another idea for you. Instead of putting them into breakouts, you guys familiar with the game Win It to Minute?
Go for it.
So
Tell.
you have 1 minute, and everybody get a piece of paper. Everybody got a piece of paper? And you're gonna have 1 minute to write down all the activities that you can think of that you can do as a family. No judgment. Just write down everything that you can think of, but you only got 1 minute. Oh, okay. Rachel, correct me. Minute to win it. Whatever.
When are they gonna win?
You knew what I meant. So, okay, are we ready? 1 minute, begin. Time. Okay, so in the chat, put down how many you got. Put down how many ideas you came up with. Got 8, 12, 5, 6, 15, 4,
Let's hear it.
5. I know, we're gonna go through them.
Good.
Let's see. 4, 6, 13. All right, some of you I haven't heard from yet. I'm gonna call you if I don't see your stuff in the chat. 12, 10.
You got a creative group here, Deborah.
I know. This is awesome.
Sounds like they got a lot of energy now.
Okay, well, so let's see. Zelda, you had 12. Take yourself off mute and tell us what were some of those 12 interesting things to do.
Okay, I actually asked my kids and they all gave me their ideas, stuff that they love to do. So, okay, shh. So we have play with slime, make slime, shop, use those kit stencils, you know, like that drawing thing, clay creation, draw, paint, watch a video, bake, bike, and hike. This is a combination of a few of my kids.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome.
I like to ride my bike on it.
All right.
All right, let's see. So, Phyllis, you had 4. What did you have? Okay,
Okay,
there you are.
all right. I just had puzzles, play Skippo, go to gym, play basketball.
There you
Okay,
Sounds like
awesome. Let's see who else we haven't heard from. Joy, you had 6. What did you have?
I had played Exploding Kittens. My kids are obsessed with that game right now. We go on hikes a lot. We are watching The Amazing Race together as a family. In the evenings, the library's back open. So I just got a huge stack of books that I've been reading through, and they're so happy to have new reading material. We do what we call special bath if they're having a rough day, and they get candles and some music and maybe even a little snack in their bath and a dance party.
yay.
Nice. All right, Melanie, you had 12.
Oh, Melanie, go for it.
Okay, I have watched the sun go down at night. We've done that numerous times because we live in Cheyenne Canyon now and we have a really good view. We also watch the sun come up in the morning when we get up early. We make meals together, plan them, cook them, make a shopping list before Grandma goes to the store so I can get some of the fun things that they want to eat. We also go to the library a lot. We go to the dollar store a lot and spend a lot of dollars at the dollar store. And we like to do puzzles, watch movies, we do the laundry together and change the beds and clean the house together, which we never did that. I always did that by myself.
Nice.
You know, we call that's teamwork. There you go.
All right. Okay, Sandy.
Oh, you guys are awesome. So you see, every coin has 2 sides. And when you begin to look at the plus side of things, life is, you know, got more possibilities and maybe more fun and gives you more energy. So I think that's great. Let's go on. Here's some more examples.
Hiding something.
What? Okay, so avoiding the perfect storm. So we're going to do positive self-talk instead of always sinking down to the worst of the conditions we're dealing with. You can literally control yourself to think about what are the positives today? What are the positives today? And again, you have no control over the coronavirus, but you have total control over how you let it affect you, your emotional balance, your relationships with the people living in your home with you. And that's the way it is. And if you just need some time to recharge your battery, you can put that in your family schedule too. Let's set the timer. Boy, timers are awesome because they put lids on things. So even in terms of some self-indulgent, I'm worn out, tired, and wish we had more money, you put a limit on it. Okay, when that timer rings, yeah, I'll get to do that for a minute and a half. And when that timer rings, I'm done. And you learn to be, you can't control so many of the external things that are happening in your lives, but you have total control over how you handle it. And there you go. So have a little exercise with your kids. List the things you do have control over. And we could do a breakout, or you could just do this at home with your kids and list the things, let the kids come up with things they have control over. And if they can't think of any, then hopefully you will be able to. And you make it a celebration. Wow, guys. You know, I'm always thinking about what we have no control over, like going to school and being able to go to the park and play with kids. But look at all the things we are in control over. We just have to remember those things and celebrate those right now. So again, it's about changing your perspective. And it takes some energy to do it, but it's going to be a tremendous payoff for you. Okay, so we don't even have to go into the breakout if you're concerned about the time, Deborah.
Yep, I think this is something they can do with at home.
Kids, yeah. So when it comes to just figuring out with kids, you know, where they're at and what some of their struggles are about, you think about things like, okay, give me, and if 3 things is give me one thing you're worried about. And I'll tell you, there's something very supportive about taking the time to get a pencil and write it down and just simply letting your kid know. I used to have, well, as a foster child living in my home, but she used to have these tremendous rages. And one day I looked at her and I said, Jennifer, hold on. What you are saying is so important. I want to get a pencil and a paper and write it down. And by the time we got all done with me writing, she was no longer screaming. And then I said to her, when we were all done, I said, Jen, what would you like me to do with this paper? Do you want to put it on the fridge so we can remember the things you said and we can decide to read them? Would you like to start your own notebook? In her case, she had a social worker. I said, would you like to mail it to your social worker? So I took this rageful, out of control kid who's helping me decide what to do with this lovely laundry list of all the things that weren't fair in her life that we wrote down, and now we were going to decide what to do with it. So as many ways as possible, you can turn things around and empower your children to feel that they do have some control over what's going on. So here's a list. Ask them to give 3 things that you're worried about. Boy, I know that we've been having some challenges and I know you're bored, but let's talk about 3 things that are boring to you. Let's write those down. What could we do instead of those 3 things then? And you let them begin to brainstorm with you. And all you're doing is leading them to a more positive path to find solutions instead of being stuck in the cesspool of the problem. Okay, but you want to acknowledge how important it is. What they're thinking and what they're feeling is important, but that they also have control to turn some of it around and find some good things to think about and some fun things to do. Okay, and maybe you're going to have one of the solutions and ask your kid to give it a try. Maybe you say to your kid, I can't think of a solution. Can you maybe help me think of one and I'll give it a try? So you empower them too. There you go. Let's go on to the next one because I know time's a factor. So again, you try to get some structure to it. You're going to give them specific days and times, maybe that you're going to set aside for a battery recharge, just recharging our batteries. And you decide what that's going to look like. It might be a back rub. It might be a walk outside. It might be, you know, you have to decide what would be interesting and fun for you and your kids. And if they're old enough, you know, maybe they want to have some independent time that they normally don't get because you're all crowded in a house. You could even have a pretend party and practice having fun. You know, you just come up with nonsense stuff. And then you can find ways to reward good behavior. You know, wow, I just noticed that you're now sitting quietly, and a little while ago you were crying, and that's amazing. How did you, oh, that's another technique that we teach in the parent training, is this thing called marveling. It's like you look at the kid and go, how did you do that? That's amazing. And you can't believe what kind of responses you'll get from your kids for doing things like that. Okay, go ahead, Deborah. Let's see where we're at. Yep, we're almost there. So again, we don't need to do the breakout, but we can talk about ideas that the family talking about. Well, what used to be so much fun for us? And you could even do things like put each one in its own special envelope or fold it in a certain way and color the outside of it. Boy, what you said is so important. I want to save these. Let's save these. And let's see in a week if we're still feeling the same way, or tomorrow if we're still feeling the same way, if a week's too long. But the things that they're disappointed about, I can't tell you how helpful it is. And for younger kids, it might not be writing the words on a piece of paper, drawing a picture. So if Bobby, who's 5 years old, used to be able to throw a soccer ball with his friend next door and can't do it anymore, then let him or you help him draw a picture of that soccer ball and maybe fold it up and put it in a special place and say, soon enough, we'll be able to do that. Where should we save this in the meantime? You give them some kind of action they can do that does give them control over it in some kind of a symbolic way, if not actual. Okay, same thing with all of those things. Okay, so again, we'll skip the breakout because of the time. This idea, well, I wanted to go back for 1 second if we could, Deborah. This idea of family meetings where you sit down and you problem solve together, and asking them for any ideas on new routines that would be fun, and just kind of opening up the possibilities. Okay, we're just going to shorten all this and get her done. So remember that anything positive that you can instill in your daily routines are going to help you feel more comfortable and less anxious, and the same thing with your kids. And there'll be less challenging behaviors out of it too. So anything that is spoken politely, even if the kid says, you know what, I just hate playing. I hate playing at home all alone during the day, or I just hate having to go brush my teeth, or whatever it is. If it's spoken politely and it's spoken nicely, then that's a positive, because the kid didn't scream it, the kid didn't have a tantrum, the kid didn't have a rage. And also you remember that one of the most powerful tools, and it's such an easy part of parenting that we forget, is to give your child choices. So it might be the kid saying, no, I don't want to eat dinner. That dinner looks gross and I'm not going to eat and you can't make me. So you say, well, it's 5 o'clock now. So it's 5 o'clock and you don't want to eat. What do you think might be a good time? When do you think you might be okay with eating? And let's see if we can, or which part of your meal would you like to eat? You begin to empower them in whatever ways possible. And you begin to empower yourselves the same way. You're going to focus in any given day. I guarantee you, there may be 200 things your kids did to drive you nuts, but there's going to be 50. Even if it was the absence of the behavior that was driving you nuts, that quiet moment, and you want to begin to notice those, you want to begin to force yourself to, if not look for the positive behavior, look for the absence of negative and begin to build on that. Wow, we just, whatever was going on, we just finished homework time, and I just want to say that you guys were able to work for 7 minutes today. And gosh, yesterday was only for 2 minutes. Wow, how did you get up to 7? That's great. You just find the tiniest little nugget and begin to put energy into that being a positive for the kid.
So Sandy, if I can just make a comment, you know, many of you have older kids. I mean, you have a balance. So we've got some that are on this session that have very young kids, and some of you have older kids. And one of the things that has come from a lot of the suicides that have occurred, some of the information that's come from some of the parents, from some of these kids, as well as friends that had talked to the kids before, are saying, no one was listening. No one was listening to me. I was hurting, not understanding what's going on. And parents were just saying, get used to it, get over it, get back to routine. And kids are not adults. And many adults are struggling with that type of response.
Adults are kids. Yeah,
That's true. So we've got to add another layer there for our, especially our teens and our young adults, is give them opportunity to really let you know how they're feeling, and don't brush it off as, you know, you've just got to get back to normal, or you got to learn how to get over it, because although they're older, they are hurting inside just as our younger kids are. And so we can't expect them to understand everything that's happening, because this is not normal for them. And they've had a lot of things removed from their lives that they had gotten comfortable with before March of last year. So just
to say nothing of the hormonal changes going on in pre-adolescence and adolescence, which adds to instability, which adds to anxiety. Absolutely. You don't have to agree with what your kid says. You watch and see how positive it is, just to acknowledge, I hear you, I'm listening. You don't have to agree or disagree, just I hear you. And then sometimes, wow, I didn't realize it was like that for you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for trusting me. That's all. You can't believe how far that goes. And so the choices thing is, so it doesn't have to be, no, I'm not going to take that bath, or maybe with the teenage kid, no, I'm not doing my homework now and you can't make me, or I don't want to go to school today, the hell with the computer, I don't want to do it. And so you kind of, you give them choices. Well, when do you think? How about tomorrow? How much time can you, maybe your kid is perpetually refusing to do the online stuff. How long do you think tomorrow you could stick with it? And you begin building with that, but you empower them, because you're not going to be able to bully them into doing it anyway. So you begin to empower them to make those choices and to stick by it. And then you find a wonderful way to celebrate with them, even if it's just I don't know, whatever is a celebration in your house. And you're going to focus on what they did right, not what they didn't do. And I guarantee you, especially as exhausted as we all are as adults, we don't always have the energy to look deeply for what the kids have done right, or even the absence of doing something wrong. If there's an absence of them doing something wrong, being rude, throwing something, biting somebody, whatever it is, if there's the absence of that, that's positive. And you want to start redefining and remembering to acknowledge that behavior. See, we got to number 9, Deborah. So how do you want to do this, Deborah? In chat rooms? Or so what I'd like to do is I'd like to get some feedback from you all, but not individually. If you were in chat rooms or something like that, you could just, somebody could tally, you know, how many people said number 1 had a check mark or didn't, you know, true or false, I mean. And I'd like you just to go through and give me some feedback over whether this session was helpful for you.
I've got 3 door prize winners tonight, and then I'll do a roll call of once you hear your name, then you can go ahead and log off. Let's give Sandy some appreciation for her time tonight. And again, if you don't try it, you don't know whether it will work or not. And the best thing to do to learn new ways of doing things is to try them. And we'll also send out the eval after this session so that we can get your feedback as well. But thank you again for your time. And And again, we can't change the coronavirus. We can only change ourselves and how we deal with the situations. And I believe that that's the message that Sandy was giving us, and being honest with our kids about what's actually happening.